Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
When I moved to a new city for work back in 2011, I was eager to start my career in graphic design. I needed a reliable internet connection for my job, so I signed up with the only provider available in my area. At first, things were okay. The internet worked most of the time and I could manage my work. But as months went by, the service got worse. There were random outages, sometimes lasting for days. No warnings, no explanations. Just nothing. I tried to be patient. I called their customer service, waited on hold for hours, and got empty promises. They'd say they'd look into it, or that it'd be fixed soon. But nothing ever changed. By 2012, I was at my wit's end. My job was suffering. I had to go to coffee shops just to meet deadlines. The last straw came when there was no internet for over 2 weeks straight. 2 weeks? Can you imagine? I called them again, my patience wearing thin. I explained to the customer service rep that I'd been without internet for 2 weeks and that it was unacceptable. They apologized and offered to send a technician to check it out. When I asked when, they said they'd schedule someone to come by next week. I told them I'd already been without internet for 2 weeks, and they just repeated that it was the earliest they could manage. Spoiler alert, no one ever came. Fed up, I went to their branch office. After hours of waiting and arguing, one of the higher-ups finally decided to do his job. As an apology, they said they'd only charge me for the days I actually had internet. How generous of them, right? It took 3 more days for my internet to work again. The bill arrived, and it was higher than it should have been. I walked back to the branch office the same day, ready to sort this out once and for all. Before I could even open my mouth, the employee at the counter dropped a bomb on me. They told me that I'd have to pay a penalty since I'd be late in paying. That was it. I lost it. I told them I was there to dispute the bill, not pay it. They just kept repeating that it was their policy. When I asked about their policy of providing the service I was paying for, they had no answer. They wouldn't explain anything. Just kept repeating their policy like robots. That's when I made my decision. I told them I was done and wanted to cancel my service right then and there. What followed was 5 hours of pure bureaucratic hell. They tried everything to make me stay. Discounts, promises, even guilt-tripping. But I stood my ground. Finally, they told me I had to call one of their reps to give my reasons for canceling. The phones were by the entrance, in full view of the waiting room. An assistant watched me like I was some kind of criminal. After 10 minutes on hold, someone finally answered. They asked me to list my reasons for canceling. I told them I'd be happy to, and then I let loose. Every outage, every broken promise, every frustration of the past year came pouring out. I didn't hold back. The whole waiting room could hear me, and I didn't care. I told them about how they had the audacity to charge me a late fee when I was there to dispute a bill for service I never received. People in the waiting room started to shift uncomfortably. Some even got up and left. The assistant looked like she wanted to melt into the floor. When I finished, one of the managers had the nerve to try and guilt-trip me. They said they didn't think it was necessary for me to air their dirty laundry like that in front of other customers. I replied that if they didn't want their dirty laundry aired, maybe they should have washed it. In the end, I had to pay the bill and the penalty, but it was worth it to be free of them. They couldn't get me out of there fast enough after that. I found a better provider the next day, but I wasn't done yet. I went on Facebook and shared my experience, holding nothing back. The post blew up. Hundreds of comments from people sharing similar horror stories poured in. A week later, I got a call from the regional director of the company, practically begging me to take down the post. They offered me 6 months of free service if I'd come back. I declined, telling them I'd rather pay for a service that actually works. Last I heard, they lost a significant chunk of customers in our area. Sometimes, you've got to make a scene to make a change. And let me tell you, it felt good to be the one who started it. First, a bit about me. I lost my left arm in an accident 5 years ago. It was tough adjusting, but I didn't let it stop me from living my life. I worked hard in physical therapy, learned to do everything with one arm, and even got promoted at work. My job involves surprise inspections of restaurants to ensure they're following health and safety regulations. So there I was, heading to this place downtown that had been flagged for a few minor violations in the past. Nothing major, but enough to warrant a follow-up. I decided to go incognito, to see how they treat regular customers. I walked in and immediately felt the waitress's eyes on me. She looked me up and down, lingering on my empty left sleeve. I smiled, trying to break the ice. I greeted the waitress and asked for a table for one. She hesitated before agreeing and telling me to follow her. She led me to a table in the far corner, practically hidden behind a large plant. I sat down and she just stood there, not saying a word or offering a menu. I politely requested a menu. The waitress stammered that she'd be right back. She scurried off, leaving me sitting there feeling pretty uncomfortable. A few minutes passed, and still no menu. I was about to get up and ask again when this woman in a crisp suit came marching over. She had that look, the one that screams, "I'm in charge, and I'm not happy." The woman asked if there was a problem. I explained that I had been waiting for a menu for quite a while. She questioned why I would need a menu, which took me aback. I responded, stating the obvious reason people come to restaurants: to order food. The woman then told me that this was a high-class establishment with certain standards. Confused, I asked her to clarify what she was implying. She bluntly told me that they don't typically serve people like me there, as it makes other customers uncomfortable. I asked if she meant people with disabilities. The woman tried to deflect, saying I was disrupting their atmosphere, and asked me to leave. At this point, I was fuming but decided to play it cool a bit longer. I clarified with her, asking if she was refusing to serve me because I'm an amputee. She denied, twisting her words, claiming she was protecting her business and other customers' interests. I inquired if she was the manager. She confirmed she was both the owner and manager, asserting her right to refuse service to anyone. That's when I decided to drop the act. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my health inspector badge. I introduced myself properly as a health inspector there to conduct a surprise inspection. The color drained from her face. It was almost comical. I began listing her violations, starting with the clear breach of the Americans with Disabilities Act and pointing out other issues I'd already noticed, like mold and flies. The woman protested, saying I couldn't do this. I assured her that I could and would, declaring her restaurant closed pending a full inspection and review. After that, I called in my team and we went through that place with a fine-tooth comb. Turns out that disability discrimination was just the tip of the iceberg. We found expired food, cross-contamination in the kitchen, and even evidence of pest infestations. By the end of the day, the restaurant was shut down indefinitely. When we were wrapping up, I saw the owner sitting on the curb outside, head in her hands. Part of me felt a twinge of sympathy, but then I remembered how she treated me, and likely others before me. I walked up to her, my clipboard in hand. I explained that running a restaurant isn't just about fancy decor or an atmosphere, but about treating all customers with respect and following safety laws. I expressed hope that she'd learn from this experience. She didn't respond, just kept staring at the ground. In the end, it wasn't my disability that defined that day. It was my ability to do my job and ensure that everyone, regardless of their physical condition, could safely enjoy a meal out. And if that meant taking down an entitled restaurant owner, well, that was just part of the job. After years of hard work, I finally saved up enough to buy my own place. The building seemed perfect, modern amenities, great location, and a stunning view from the 16th floor. Little did I know that my dream home would come with a nightmare of an HOA. At first, everything was fine. I settled in, set up my home office, and started enjoying my new life. But then came the day I decided to do a little remodeling. I ordered a custom-made wooden desk for my workspace. When it arrived, it was disassembled, and I had to bring the pieces up to my apartment. When I was bringing the largest piece, the desktop, up in the elevator, I ran into one of the HOA board members. She looked at me like I had committed a capital offense. She demanded to know what I thought I was doing. I explained, somewhat confused, that I was just bringing up my new desk. She reacted as if I'd lost my mind, telling me it was completely against the rules to use the elevator for this purpose. When I asked how else I was supposed to get it to my apartment on the 16th floor, she dismissively said it wasn't their problem and that I should have hired professional movers or used the service elevator. I told her I didn't even know we had a service elevator and that no one had told me about this rule. She coldly replied that ignorance was not an excuse and that I should expect to hear from them. True to her word, a few days later, I received a notice of a $1,500 fine for improper use of residential elevators and potential damage to common areas. I was shocked. The wood hadn't even scratched anything. I tried to appeal, explaining that I wasn't aware of the rule and that no damage had been done. But the HOA board was ruthless. They refused to budge, citing the need to maintain order and protect property values. That's when something in me snapped. That I paid the fine because I had to, but I vowed to make them regret their pettiness. It took me a few weeks to come up with a plan. I'm no electronics expert, but I'm good with research and determined enough to learn new skills. I ordered some small electronic components online and got to work. What I created were tiny sound emitters, simple devices that would emit a loud, consistent beep 25 seconds after detecting motion. The timing was crucial. It would be just long enough for the elevator to start moving, making it hard to pinpoint the source. Late one night, I snuck out and planted these devices in all 4 elevators. It wasn't easy, and my heart was pounding the whole time, but I managed to hide them well. The next day, the chaos began. People started complaining about mysterious beeping in the elevators. The HOA board went into panic mode. They called in maintenance, then professional elevator technicians, but no one could figure out where the sound was coming from. Over the next few months, I watched with grim satisfaction as the HOA spent thousands trying to solve the mystery. They replaced parts, ran diagnostics, even considered replacing entire elevator systems. All the while, my little beepers kept doing their job. Most of the residents found it hilarious. Everyone knew how ridiculous and controlling the HOA was, and they enjoyed seeing them squirm. I overheard conversations in the lobby. I overheard 2 residents talking about the haunted elevators. One mentioned how it was driving the board crazy, and they both agreed it served the HOA right for all the stupid fines they'd been handing out. When one resident mentioned hearing that the HOA had spent over $10,000 trying to fix the problem, the other expressed satisfaction, hoping it would make the HOA think twice before charging residents for every little thing. As the months went by, the HOA's reputation took a nosedive. Residents started questioning their competence, and some even began the process of trying to replace the board. But the real cherry on top came when I learned that the HOA was being sued for fraud. Turns out, they had been overspending on ridiculous things like importing expensive flowers and doing unauthorized renovation projects. They had tried to cover it up by issuing bogus fines to residents, like the one they gave me. When this news broke, I almost felt bad about my revenge plot. Almost. But then I remembered how they had treated me and countless others, and I knew they deserved every beep they got. It's been a few years now, and I've since moved out of that building, but I still keep in touch with some old neighbors who tell me the mystery of the beeping elevators remains unsolved. The HOA is in shambles, their budget drained by their wild goose chase. Do I regret what I did? Not one bit. If I ever find myself living under another HOA, I'll be prepared. Those little beepers cost me about $15 each to make, but the satisfaction they brought? Priceless. Some might call me petty, but I prefer to think of myself as a vigilante for the little guy. To all those power-hungry HOA boards out there, watch out. You never know when your elevators might start talking back. Let me tell you about how I ended up teaching my lazy ex a lesson he won't soon forget. I met him at a friend's party about 2 years ago. He was charming, funny, and seemed to have his life together. We hit it off immediately, and within a few months, we decided to move in together. That's when things started to change. At first, it was little things. He'd forget to do the dishes or leave his laundry lying around. I brushed it off, thinking everyone has their quirks. But as time went on, his laziness became more apparent. He'd spend hours playing video games while I worked from home. When I asked him to help with chores, he'd always have an excuse. He'd say he was too tired, or that he'd do it later. Later never came. The real problem started when he lost his job. I understood it was a tough time and I was willing to support him while he looked for work. But instead of job hunting, he spent his days lounging around, expecting me to take care of everything. One day, I couldn't take it anymore. I confronted him about his behavior. I told him we needed to talk about his lack of effort around the house. He acted confused, claiming he did plenty. When I asked for examples, like when he last did laundry or cooked dinner, he tried to guilt me. He said he was going through a rough patch and asked if I could cut him some slack. I reminded him that I'd been cutting him slack for months and was tired of being the only one putting in any effort. To my shock, he suggested that if I was so unhappy, maybe we should break up. I was stunned at how easily he suggested ending our relationship. It was like he didn't care at all. That's when I realized I deserved better. We agreed he'd move out at the end of the month. As the days went by, he made no effort to pack. He continued his lazy routine, playing games and leaving messes for me to clean up. I was fuming, but I kept my cool. The day before he was supposed to leave, I snapped. I looked around at all his unpacked stuff and decided if he couldn't be bothered to take care of his things, why should I? I went to the bathroom and grabbed the Invisalign trays I've been paying for out of pocket. He had terrible teeth when we met, always complaining about jaw pain and headaches. I'd spent a small fortune trying to help him. Without a second thought, I tossed them in the dumpster outside. Next, I found my canker sore powder. He was always biting his cheek and getting sores, and this was the only thing that helped him. I hid it in a place he'd never think to look. Finally, I took his prescription insoles for his foot problems and cut them to pieces. If he couldn't be bothered to pack them, he clearly didn't need them. The next day, he left without so much as a thank you for everything I'd done for him. Good riddance, I thought. A few days later, my phone buzzed with a text from him. He asked if he could come by to pick up his Invisalign and some of that canker sore powder. I took a deep breath and replied, reminding him that I had paid for the Invisalign and told him he was welcome to dig them out of the dumpster if he wanted them so badly. I also pretended not to know what powder he was talking about. He was shocked, asking why I would throw away his things and insisting he needed them. I sarcastically pointed out that it was funny how he suddenly needed them when he couldn't be bothered to pack them himself. He tried to appeal to my sympathy, saying his jaw was killing him and he kept getting sores. I coldly told him it sounded like a personal problem and suggested that if he'd shown some appreciation while he was here, things might have been different. He protested that it wasn't fair, reminding me how much those things had helped him. I retorted that he knew how much I had helped him, but that didn't stop him from being a lazy freeloader. I told him to consider it a life lesson. I blocked his number after that. It might seem harsh, but after months of being taken advantage of, it felt good to finally stand up for myself. Knowing he'd be uncomfortable until he saved up money to restart his treatments made me satisfied. And knowing him, saving money wasn't exactly his strong suit. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.